Good evening, and welcome to the hybrid in-person and virtual meeting for the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Central Frontenac. Members of the public may join in person or virtually. For those of you who may know me to be the new Committee of Adjustment, my name is Bill Everett, and I am the chair of the committee. We also have committee members to my left, Dan Meeks, Lynn Clagis, Philip Smith, Nikki Gowdy. To my right, Duncan McGregor, Francis Smith, and Nikki Kelsey. I'm sorry, Cindy. It's my eyes. For township staff, we have Abigail McKinnon and Chris Nelson. And from county,
Sorry, it's frozen there.
we have Jenny Capusta. Chris Nelson, our community service coordinator, will be assisting us at the meeting as the meeting host. We are also joined by planning staff. The format of the meeting will follow the agenda posted online. Staff have prepared a presentation to follow along with during the meeting. This will be shown on the screen. For each application with a public hearing, we will follow this format. I, as the chair, will introduce the file so that everyone knows where we are on the agenda. The planner will provide an overview of the application. We will then ask, are there any comments from the applicant or their agent? Committee members may then ask staff and the applicant or their agents questions, if any. The public will then have the opportunity to ask questions or provide comments. I encourage you to ask any questions you may have. The committee will then deliberate and vote on the application. Voting will take place with members of the committee raising their hands or verbal confirmation if attending online. I will then state whether the vote was carried. All members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the new applications. Please note that as of January 1st, 2023, only persons specified in the Act are permitted to appeal consent and minor variance applications. All members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the new applications. Moving down. Township staff will be in touch following the meeting and will forward a copy of the decision within 15 days to the applicant and anyone who is requested to be notified. Should you have any questions after the meeting, we encourage you to reach out to staff. The applicant, the minister, or any prescribed public body with an interest in the matter may appeal the committee's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of the decision or notice date by submitting an appeal through the e-file portal. Details about the e-file portal system are provided in the notice of decision. I will now ask Chris Nelson to provide an overview of how members attending virtually can participate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once the meeting is open to the public, the chair will ask if anyone has any questions or comments. Members of the public attending virtually will be asked to use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. This alerts us that you would like to speak. Staff will then notify the chair that someone would like to speak and then proceed to unmute your microphone. You'll receive a notification that your microphone has been unmuted. Please wait a second after unmuting your microphone before speaking. If you are calling in by phone, please dial *9 when you would like to raise your hand during the meeting. You'll hear a prompt on the phone that you have raised your hand, and you will be notified when your microphone has been unmuted. This afternoon, it looks as though we have 3 members of the public participating with us online and 0 in person.
In the unlikely account that we have connection issues and the meeting cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting will be postponed and staff will be in touch with each applicant. A notice will also be posted on the township social media letting you know. Approval of the agenda, March 25, 2025. Motion by Francis Smith, seconded by Susan Irwin, that the agenda for March 25, 2025 meeting be adopted.
Susan's not here. No. Lynn? Lynn.
Seconded by Lynn Clagus. Are there any amendments or corrections?
No, there are not.
All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? None noted. Approval of the February 11th minutes, moved by Lynn Clagus, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that the minutes from February 11th, 2025 meeting be adopted as presented or amended.
I haven't gotten any amendments.
All those in favor? Carried. Are there any deferred items?
No, there is not.
Are there any applications for consent?
No, there is not.
There are two applications for minor variance, APPN 2025-003 Crinkle. Ms. Kapusta, will you please introduce the package?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so the screen sharing has come up. This is an application for permission to expand an existing non-complying structure located approximately 15 meters from the high water mark of Leggett Lake. You can see here on the screen, the existing is the small box with the even smaller green box behind it being the addition. There'll be better details on the following slides, I promise. But this gives you an idea of the overall of the property. There's also a septic system, class 4, with a leaching bed and a shed on the property. The proposed addition is going to be an interior living space addition to the existing cottage, and this will have a crawl space underneath for services. Will be accessed from the outside and is not considered to be living space of any sort. It's not part of the inside. It's more a place to put the stuff that you need to have, but you don't want to look at, like furnaces and things like that. The proposed addition will have an area of 45 square meters, which is approximately 484 square feet, and will not further reduce the existing non-complying setback than the current situation. Here on the next slide, there's some images. So on the left is the cottage, and that is the location where the addition will be constructed. There's limited existing vegetation in that area. In fact, the driveway currently goes right up to the back of the cottage there, and that's where they're proposing the construction of the addition. The other one is the western side of the cottage. Again, this is to give you an idea of what the existing cottage looks like. Small seasonal cottage, similar to many in the township. On the northern side, so this is the side facing the water with the 15-meter setback. There is an existing small ground level deck area, but that is, as I said, that's the opposite side from where the addition is proposed, so there's no changes being proposed to this side of the cottage. Here on this slide, you can see this is part of the plan submitted, the existing cottage with 2 bedrooms and kitchen, covered porch, utility area. Again, the existing utility area is intended to be located, most of those services as possible, underneath into the crawl space. So I'm going to catch up. Here on the next one, so the existing cottage is highlighted in red at the top of this image, with the addition shown at the bottom. So there are more reconfiguration than addition of bedrooms to the cottage. The overall number of fixtures and things are going to remain the same. So part of the review for an application for minor variance or permission would also involve septic review. In this case, because of the location of the septic system and the size of the subject property, system being more than 30 meters, there's more than sufficient space for enlargement if needed, with no additional planning approvals. So comments weren't required as part of this application because there's sufficient area on the property to do that if needed. Full determination will be done when the building permit is submitted and the final plans have been presented to the Township Building Department. As this is a waterfront property, comments were received from Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, who reviewed the application and have no objections as presented. They look at natural hazards such as provincially significant wetlands, floodplains, organic soils, things like that. And the proposed addition is not near any identified natural hazards. They did note that while this proposed addition does not require a permit, if there's other addition on the things on the property, such as site alteration, fill, grading, things like that, within 15 meters of Leggett Lake, a permit would be required from conservation. There were no public comments received regarding this application, and planning staff are recommending that, subject to any comments received tonight, that the committee approves this application as submitted. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, does the applicant or their agent have anything to say?
Please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to speak. I'm seeing nothing.
Do any members of the committee have anything to ask? And I don't see any public. So, motioned by Cindy Kelsey, seconded by Duncan McGregor, that minor variance application APPN 2025-0003 Krinke for concession 7, part lot 5, geographic township of Olden, 1316 Leggett Lake Road, township of Central Frontenac, be approved to permit the expansion of an existing legal non-complying structure with an existing footprint of 54 square meters, approximately 581 square feet. The addition will be 45 square meters, 844.5 square feet. The final structure would have a combined footprint of 99 square meters or 1,065.6 square feet. That is unable to meet the required water body setback of 30 meters. And that effect of the application is to permit a variance from section 5.6.2 and 4.26.5A of the zoning bylaw 2011-52 as amended to allow for the expansion of the dwelling. And further, that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body prescribed. All those in favor? I have questions now.
I just want to clarify, the addition 45 square meters, I thought I heard you say 800 and some square feet. So I just want to make sure.
Did I say 480? I believe it was 484.6 square feet,
484.5 square
or
feet.
0.5.
And that's what the motion says?
Yes.
Thanks.
All those in favor? Carried. I'm still going to blame it on my eyes. Application B, APPN 2024-0040 Shook. Ms. Capuste, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a little more complex than the last one. This is a minor variance application that was submitted as a result of a bylaw enforcement situation. And the proposal is to recognize construction that has already begun in the absence of permits from either the township or the Conservation Authority or any additional planning approvals. However, planning staff would like to note that all applications, whether they've begun or not, are reviewed as if no work has begun. So we do look at it on a basis as if this was not in place. It's, if you were asking, this is how we would review these applications. So the overall proposal is to construct a dry boathouse and attached oversized viewing deck. The reason I note that is that the boathouse, while it doesn't need planning approvals, is attached to the structure that is part of this. So it's more noted that it is in there. It is within the size and location permitted by the zoning bylaw. So it's on there as part of the sketches because it was submitted. And I just want to make sure everyone's understanding that It's attached, but that part's okay on its own, provided it had building permits. The applicant is looking to get permits for the entire structure. Sorry. Again, the application as submitted shows a viewing deck and gazebo attached to that boathouse. However, further depth reading of the township zoning bylaw, the definitions require gazebo to be a freestanding structure. So a gazebo couldn't be on a deck or attached to another structure. However, a viewing deck is permitted to have a roof covering and be enclosed with screening. So while it'll look like a gazebo on a viewing deck, it's actually all part of a viewing deck with a roof. It's more a technical sort of description rather than any change to what's actually proposed. It's just we look at it as a footprint of a viewing deck rather than two separate structures. So the total area proposed for the viewing deck is 36.3 square meters, or just under 394 square feet. And as stated on the application, would have a water body setback of 2.1 meters or 6.9 feet. So the maximum area for a viewing deck permitted in the zoning bylaw is, oh, sorry, I got the numbers wrong. It's 179 square feet. Sorry, I have that written down. Less than half of what is proposed through this application. And the minimum required setback is to be 15 meters for a viewing deck of that size. So on this next slide here is the sketch submitted with the application. On the right-hand side is the full sketch showing the outline of the property and the existing structures. So the existing is a cottage, septic system, well, and a sleep cabin on the non-water side of the cottage. The image on the left is just a zoomed in and cropped version where I have indicated the different structures as noted in the application in different colors. So the boathouse is in gray, and I said that's the dry boathouse that does on its own meet the provisions of the bylaw. The gazebo area shown on here is the area that's proposed to have the roof covering. The applicant has indicated the intent really is just to have a roof over, not actually enclose it with screen walls, more of a shade structure on the viewing deck. And then the blue shows the viewing deck and access stairs. Planning staff would like to note that the numbers are a little off on this. It's showing a property width of 56 meters, side yard on one side of 44 meters and 12 meters on the other, which leaves less than a meter in the middle, but obviously the deck is larger than that, so there was a little discrepancy with some of the numbers on the sketch as compared to the application form. However, that's not always unusual, and we do our best to pin down the actual numbers, and that's what's shown on the application form. So here on the next slide, in November 2024, the township chief building official went out in response to the complaint received and took photos of the viewing deck and structure. So the partially completed structure or wall structure in this one is, that's the dry boathouse part of this application. And then out front, you can see there is a viewing deck that extends down towards the lake. Here on this next slide, another one again taken in November of 2024 by the CBO, out on the dock of the property, shows the proximity of the structure to the shoreline. So again, the proposed setback in the application was stated at 2.1 meters based on these images. It's uncertain if it is meeting that at this point. So this was put in at that, and then the applicant reached out following this visit to planning staff. There were discussions had, and he was advised that he needs to consult Conservation Authority, especially with the proximity of the structure to the water, and the Conservation Authority's responsibility for natural hazard concerns such as drainage, erosion, things like that. And it's not a steep slope in the 3-to-1 steep slopes strictly, but there's definitely a slope down. There were some concerns with vegetation removal to facilitate the deck. Again, that was, so he was advised to reach out to conservation for comments to see what they were thinking as part of the pre-application review process. He submitted that, and so as part of the pre-application review, once he discussed with conservation, township staff and myself, so Abby and I went out to take a look at the property. We did that at the end of January, once this had come in as a more formal submission. So here you can see on the screen, despite the work order being placed on the property, construction did continue on the boathouse structure, even in the absence of any permits being issued for said boathouse. Again, that's up to the applicant, and subsequent to the site visit that planning and township staff conducted, the township CBO did put a stop work order on to ensure that no further construction could take place. Due to the snow cover at the time of our site visit, we were unable to appropriately determine what the setback was. Again, after that site visit, we met with the applicant, again virtually, to have discussions regarding comments received by conservation authorities. So I would just flip on to the next one. Rideau Valley provided formal comments January 6th, and you note that township planning staff didn't go out till the 28th of January. We do try and have conversations and work with people. So these comments came in saying that they didn't support it as presented. And as I noted, conservation authorities, it is their responsibility under provincial policy to review natural hazard concerns. And these comments provided expressed concerns to site drainage patterns and the increase in erosion hazard potential on this property due to the extent of the added hardened surfaces. So the extent of the decking over top of the ground, they expressed concerns with regards to that. As that is their purview under provincial regulations, planning staff do defer to them when it comes to natural hazard concerns. The RVCA comments also noted that the entire structure is within the regulated area of RVCA. So I noted that within that 15-meter setback from the water body. However, due to the size and location of it and the concerns expressed, RVCA staff would be unable to issue a development permit as proposed currently. Conversations with the applicant in February of 2025. We had discussions to see if there was an ability to work with conservation. At that point, the applicant indicated that conservation would be possibly willing to support a reduced deck area of 160 square feet. So the proposal currently is just under 400, and conservation at that time was willing to look at 160, so that's quite a big difference. The applicant was not willing to reduce to that level, so we discussed if proceeding, what my recommendation would be, which would be not to approve it, as it did not meet the intent of provincial policy for natural hazards, and therefore could not comply with either county or township official plan policies on natural hazards, as those must have regard and for the provincial policy. It's kind of a top-down. If it doesn't meet this one, then it can't be said to meet the next ones down, and so on down. So in order to ensure that we were all on the same page, the township obtained a legal opinion from the township solicitor, as we were under the impression that should the committee approve the minor variance, or the applicant was under the impression should the committee approve the minor variance, that that would sort of compel RVCA to then have to issue a permit because the township granted approval. The township solicitor did confirm that approval at the committee does not compel or require the conservation authority to issue a permit, because planning approvals through the Committee of Adjustment are under the Planning Act. The conservation rules and permits and developments are under the Conservation Authorities Act. So they are not actually under the same provincial act regulations. And Planning Act approval does not compel Conservation Authorities Act approval. So should the committee choose to approve it as submitted, it would still run into issues getting a township building permit, because under the Ontario Building Code, The zoning bylaw is applicable law, as is any permit requirements under the Conservation Authorities Act. So if conservation wouldn't issue a permit, the township could not issue a building permit even if the committee today approved the variance and felt it was appropriate for the development. So that was a challenge, and it was confirmed by the solicitor that in fact that is correct, that it does not compel it. With all of the changes in provincial regulations over the last couple of years, that was something that was a concern and seemed to have gone back and forth. But so we reached out for a legal opinion, is make sure we're knowing what we're talking about when we're saying these things. Based on all of those things and further details that in the planning report, planning staff are recommending denial of the application as submitted, again, for reasons of concerns with regards to natural hazards and drainage, as well as the size of the deck, the massing along the shoreline. Really, it does not meet the official plan intent for limiting that built form in proximity. There is questions and concerns with regards to the actual setback. So when you're looking at impacts and, minor, it's not minor, it's more than twice what would be permitted with a significant reduction in setback. There's also some questions with regards to the layout and the stairs that appeared to extend directly down to the shoreline. So in that case, if those stairs did meet the shoreline, that would essentially be a 0-meter setback, not the 2.1 as stated in the application form. There were no septic comments required. Again, this is not interior living space, and it's not anywhere near the septic system, and there were no public comments received regarding this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, are there any comments from the applicant or their agent?
Yes. Yes, there is. Okay, Mr. Shook, you can unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me? Can you see me or?
No, we cannot.
Oh, okay. Do I need to share my camera or anything or?
You
Is that
can,
fine?
it's completely up to you. If you are sharing your camera right now, we can't see you, but it's not necessary. We can hear you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. So thank you to the committee for the opportunity to present today. I'm here seeking approval for a minor variance to recognize a 393.9 square foot viewing deck with a 2.1 meter setback from the high water mark. This structure is essential for providing safe, stable, and inclusive access to the shoreline for a family member with a disability. I respectfully submit that this variance meets all 4 tests required under the Planning Act and ask the committee to consider the full context and updated information not captured in the planning report. I wanted to show a picture of my stepmom, Joy, who lives with multiple sclerosis. I thought I'd have an opportunity to share that. If there is an opportunity, I really appreciate it if I could, just to give some context of her in a wheelchair. Her condition requires safe, stable, and accessible access to the shoreline. This application is about making that possible, not just for convenience, but out of necessity. In 2023, I applied to the RVCA for a permit to build a retaining wall to create a flat, unusable space for Joy. An RVCA representative visited the site and advised against the retaining wall due to concerns about water flow and drainage disruption. When I explained the need for flat terrain for Joy's mobility, they recommended a deck as a better alternative. I reviewed the shoreline activity regulation, ensured that no trees were removed and that the footprint remained within the cleared shoreline area already there per the original permit request with the retaining wall. Acting in good faith, I built the deck with an integrated dry ball house, and if I wanted to bypass authorities, I could have pursued the retaining wall, but I didn't. I followed the guidance of the rep who came out. In response to the 4 tests, is the variance minor? Yes, the proposed structure fits within the allowable shoreline activity area, only 20 feet of 32.8 feet allowed. It is open, elevated, not hardened, and caused no tree removal or vegetation loss. The RVCA has acknowledged that a revised version of the structure could be allowed indicating the impact is resolvable. As confirmed by the township, the dry boathouse component does not require a permit and complies with the zoning, meaning the scope of the variance is narrower than the report implies. The proposal is unique due to the accessibility needs. This is not setting a widespread precedent. If anything, it's a reasonable precedent supporting safe access for disabled individuals with MS. Is the variance desirable for appropriate development of the land? Yes, the deck is essential for the accessibility. It was built in good faith based on prior advice from the RVCA representatives. A smaller structure would limit safe access, violating the duty to accommodate under the Ontario Human Rights Code and AODA. It is not practical for personal use to enjoy with a disability, financially, environmentally, to alter the structure to 179.7 square feet. The variance promotes responsible use of the land that benefits the whole family and allows us to use the land we own. Does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Yes, the bylaw intends to limit environmental impact and protect shoreline character. The structure is modest, unenclosed, visually unobtrusive, and within a cleared shoreline activity. Legal review shows contradictions between deck and gazebo definitions. A gazebo is permitted in the floodplain with no size restriction. The deck includes gazebo-like characteristics and falls within the spirit of shoreline structures allowed. Gazebos are allowed in floodplains, no size limit under section 4.17. Section 4.35 also allows accessibility ramps and landings to project into required setbacks. In spirit and function, this deck aligns with the accessibility goals that section 4.35 supports, creating inclusive, safe outdoor spaces for those with mobility limitations and our family. Does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? Yes, the official plan supports accessible and environmental sensitive waterfront development. I have retained an environmental consultant and committed to erosion control, vegetation buffers, and bioengineering solution. The proposal protects natural features and supports inclusive access. I'd like to make a clarification of the municipal report. The report makes it seem like I'm not following compliance from January 28th site visit. We continue to work on the boathouse, not the deck in question or the gazebo. I was informed that the dry boathouse did not require a permit and is not part of the minor variance. This report gives the impression that I ignored the stop order, which is not accurate based on the information that was provided by the municipality. It was more of a misunderstanding. My understanding, the planning report states that no building permit could be issued without a permit from the RVCA. However, I've been in direct communication with the RVCA, and the senior planner has stated that once the structure is reduced to 240 square foot, they would consider the matter resolved and update the municipality accordingly. I'm fully committed to completing that process. I asked the committee to assess my application based on the 4 planning tests under the Planning Act, not based on speculation about whether a permit may or may not be issued down the line by the RVCA. The RVCA senior planner correspondence confirms the matter was escalated and a 240 square foot deck is possible. Here versus Central Frontenac provides precedent for shoreline setback variances. They've implemented planter boxes for more visually appealing area. I've done an FOI request submitted to ensure consistent decision-making across similar cases without the same sequence of events and disability issues we incur. I have retained an environmental firm to help mitigate erosion concerns. I am prepared to add vegetation and trees, planter boxes, and implement shoreline stabilization strategies. I am open to conditions that require completion of mitigation work as part of approval and to work with the RVCA to finalize compliance. In closing, this process began in 2023. I submitted the minor variance in November 2024, and I've been working in good faith ever since. I'm seeking a practical resolution that balances environmental stewardship, human rights, and good planning. No environmental damage has occurred. I'm prepared to accommodate any necessary erosion or drainage mitigation. The size currently proposed is essential for safety and usability for a disabled family member and our family. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for equitable consideration. I've consulted with the RVCA, proposed alternatives, hired an environmental consultant, and aligned my proposal with both environmental best practices and accessibility needs. I respectfully request that the committee approve the variance as submitted with confidence that the structure is modest, compliant in principle, and serves as critical accessibility purpose. If needed, I am open to a conditional approval with requirements tied to shoreline restoration or erosion mitigation measures. The committee of approval today would give me a clear path planning foundation, allowing me to finalize the matter directly with the RVCA. Thank you again for your time and consideration of the full context of this request.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? Ms. Klages?
I just want to make sure I got my numbers right on this. The proposal was for 393 square feet? Is that correct, Jenny?
That's correct. As submitted on the application, it is for the 36.6 square meters or 393 square feet. Mr. Shook did make reference in his presentation to a number of 240 square feet, which
That's-
I saw a number of faces come up. So I can clarify that. On Friday of last week, RVCA reached out to say they had been in further contact with Mr. Shook subsequent to his confirmation that the application as submitted is what he would like to move forward with. As said initially during their prior conversations, they had indicated a support of up to 160 square feet. The 240 square feet is something we became aware of, as said, late on Friday, that there has been discussions within RVCA and the wording of their emails, there's a general consensus that they may be able to support up to 240 square feet. So that was fairly general, not specific. And that was something that came from conservation as something they may be able to consider on their side. There is no alteration to the submission provided to the township by Mr. Shook. So the application that's submitted and before you is the original 393, but that's where that 240 came in. There's always an opportunity to reduce the area. If that is something Mr. Shook is interested in, we could consider that. I would then recommend a deferral of this application if he is looking to alter the size of the deck or implement some sort of vegetation or rehabilitation program, as he stated he would be willing to do. But yes, that's where the discrepancy came in. That was a last minute number that has popped up that really we haven't had appropriate time to review and see what other options could go along with that reduction. I would like to note that at 240 square feet, though, that is still in excess of the size of a viewing deck that would be permitted under the township bylaw. I did confirm that under the township bylaw, the maximum area for a viewing deck is 16.7 square meters or 179 square feet. So even at that reduced size, if our VCA would support it, it would still require a variance for a deck that is larger than permitted and closer than permitted at the township level.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
I also just wanted to address the issue surrounding accessibility and the duty that the municipality has or doesn't have in this case to accommodate. As part of the legal opinion that we obtained from the township solicitor, we did raise this question and what the responsibility is of the municipality. And as this is private property, the municipality does not have a duty to accommodate private owners' access to water. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Mr. Shook has his hand up again. You can unmute your microphone if you'd like.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with so basically what they're saying is I can share the email is that they, they're gonna if the structure goes to 240, they bring the violation to a close, right? So they're causing it as a violation. Once it's that, they're just going to close it as a violation. If that makes sense.
Could somebody repeat that? I didn't understand what was being said. I can't hear that well here.
So in the email, I could read it if you want. It says, "Hi, Abby. I've spoken with Mr. Shook on the status of the structure with regards to the Conservation Authority Acts and regulation. At the moment, there seems to be a general agreement to reduce the structure down to 240 square feet for the attached to bring the violation to a close." So they're causing it, they're classifying it as a violation, not issuing a permit, and they're just going to close the violation when it gets down to 240.
Thank you for that clarification. Also, in response, there is a bylaw enforcement complaint through the township, which is being investigated and could be rectified through the minor variance process. There is also a violation, or I guess sort of basically a conservation authority bylaw enforcement complaint. So the violation he's referring to is the Conservation Authority's enforcement action, which is independent of the township's bylaw enforcement action and also independent of the minor variance approval process. There's quite a few acts and authorities and regulations all going together. As I said, the township and planning staff would potentially be willing to review a reduction in area if he was willing to do the 240. The understanding is that he would like to proceed with the 393 square feet, and therefore that is what has been submitted and what has been reviewed. If there is a desire to revise his application for that reduction, township and planning staff could work with conservation to see about mitigation measures and ensure that the concerns initially expressed could be addressed by the Conservation Authority, as they did have site drainage and erosion concerns, and that raised some red flags when it comes to compatibility with natural hazard policies in both county and township official plans. So it would bring one process to a close, but not all of them. It would fix that part of it.
Mr. Nelson?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Sonia has her hand up, and I saw Mr. Shook also had his hand up as well. But Sonia, you can go ahead.
Thanks very much. Good evening, everybody. And for Mr. Shook's benefit, since we haven't met, my name is Sonia Bolton. I'm the manager of community planning for the County of Frontenac and have been conferring with Jenny in terms of the file. So I would just wanted to echo Jenny's comments with respect to deferral. We proceeded with the recommendation to deny because we had been made aware that Mr. Shook was not open to making any further changes and have now found out that that's not necessarily the case. So we would be happy to continue working with him in terms of making changes that are agreeable to all parties, including our colleagues at RVCA. So I think, my perspective from what I've heard is that the most appropriate path forward at this time is to defer, to give everybody that time to make sure we've got the numbers right, the mitigation measures that could be entered into, and that sort of thing. Thanks very much.
Ms. Smith?
I would like to propose we defer this and have staff come back with something that can be agreeable to the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, but also keeping in mind that if it is 240 that's agreed on, then there needs to be a minor variance. So the applicant needs to understand this is still one step. It's not the final step.
Agreed.
I'll second that.
So all we need now is a motion in writing.
So we can just defer the motion that's been prepared.
Just change that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Shook, you can go ahead as well.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I appreciate all the collaboration on this, and I think it was Sonia. So yeah, when I met with the planning, I was willing to kind of compromise on the size, but it, based on kind of what was shared by at the time, is that if the RVCA is doing 160, that's all the municipality. So there's been a lot of back and forth regarding this between the two organizations, and I understand to defer it, but by deferring the decision, again, it's the RVCA has to make their decision, which, they said they would at 240. Now I have to go through a process with the municipality again at 240. And based on what Jenny said, like it could get denied at 240 as well. So whether if it gets approved now at 390 or whatever the amount is I still have to get in compliant with the RVCA anyway. So whether the municipality approves it at 396, I still have to get compliant with the RVCA, right? So I think like what my ask is to make a decision on this, because if you're not going to approve the 240, then I need to look at alternative measures, right? So I think by deferring it, it's just really prolonging the situation. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it makes sense. However, because the revised size was only proposed to us on Friday, planning staff have not had sufficient time to be able to assess what impact that has on the landscape, and to certainly consult Conservation Authority on what mitigation measures need to be put in place in order to monitor the development at that size. So planning staff would still be looking to recommend deferral.
Okay, and so I guess what I'm saying is that deferral is we started this process in November, right? So I'm just trying to get to a process where if the municipality doesn't support the whatever size structure of the deck, then that's something, essentially we need to discuss, because at the end of the day, I still have to get compliance with the RVCA, right? And that's what I'm trying to say here, is that by deferring it, we're just doing another meeting, another area. It's just another process, right? Where if the municipality, goes through with the vote and looks at all what I've shared today, even if the municipality approves the deck at the current size, I still need to follow compliance with the RVCA.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith.
I just want to point out, we have three options. We can approve, we can defer, or we can defeat what is happening. We have offered a deferral, but we can certainly take that off the table and vote against doing this. So Mr. Shook has his priorities, and that is he wants to have this at 398 or whatever the number is. So if he wants us to vote on it, we can forget the deferral and vote on the motion as presented.
I agree. Firstly, we have Ms. Bolton on the line.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just for Mr. Shook's benefit, Ms. Smith or Mayor Smith is correct in that the council has only three choices: approve, defer, or deny. If it is the case that you are not agreeable to a deferral, the committee can still decide to defer. It ultimately is their decision. But if you remain adamant against deferral, they may deny it. If they deny it, they cannot reconsider it. Your only recourse would be to an appeal through the Ontario Land Tribunal. And that is an unfortunate and lengthy process. So if time is a serious consideration for you with respect to resolving this, I would encourage you to accept and be agreeable to the deferral. Our goal as staff would be to work with you and RVCA so that we're all working collaboratively so you can get through. I know you've got multiple processes and approvals you need to get through. We would try and keep those moving in tandem as much as we could. But there are, if if they do deny the application, they legally are not, and you change your mind and say, no, whoa, please go back and defer it. Legally, they are not able to do so. So your only recourse would be an appeal, and they are very lengthy and no fun for anyone. So as staff's perspective at this point, based on everything we've heard this evening, is we would prefer to defer and go back and work with the applicant and the Conservation Authority. Thank you.
Okay, so can I still speak, or can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, perfect. No, thanks for that. So yeah, I guess my concern, so I guess where I'm going with this is, if we defer it, the RVCA agrees on 240, we do this again, and then, the municipality denies the 240, it's just prolonging the situation. Then I have to wait even longer to get to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And, I mean? That's kind of where I'm just going. It's been, I understand and I respect that, I haven't done this, following the permit process, but I started this in 2023.
Mr. Snook, I'm going to interrupt you right there. We've got a couple more comments. Mine being personally, I would like to defer, not deny. But I will pass you off first to Ms. Kapusta and then Mr. McGregor.
I'd just like to note, there is no guarantee that the township would deny a 240. I was merely stating that at 240 square feet, minor variance approval would be required because it is larger than permitted in the zoning bylaw. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be reasonable, it couldn't be considered, but there's more information required before any review or recommendation could be made on a reduction even down to 240. It's not saying that if it came back, it wouldn't be approved at that. It's that more information is needed at this time.
Mr. McGregor?
Mr. Chair, we're just going in circles, so.
Yes, we are.
Mayor Smith
Mr.
put a motion on
Snook?
the floor.
Will you accept a deferral? Okay. Then I am going to put in.
Can you hear me? Yep.
Okay, we are at this time running out of time. I apologize, but we'll take it to the vote now.
Feedback, that's fine. I think, yeah, I was under the impression that it could potentially, get denied at 240. So that works for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. For application APPN 20240040 Shook, that minor variance application APPN 20240040 Shook for concession 3, part lot 1, geographic township of Olden, 1380 Mountain View Estate Lanes, township of Central Frontenac, be deferred for a 36.6 square meter or 393.9 square foot covered viewing platform that is unable to meet the required water body setback of 15 meters and a maximum footprint of 16.7 square meters or 179.7 square feet as required in the zoning bylaw. And further, that the Secretary Treasurer shall issue the notice of decision in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, including providing the notice of decision to the applicant, any person or public body that made a written request to be notified, and any other person or public body. Moved by Francis Smith, seconded by Duncan McGregor.
And I'll also just note that because we're moving for a deferral, that we won't be issuing a notice of decision at this time. We will work to resolve this with the applicant prior to a decision.
All those in favor? Carried. Are there any other planning business?
No, there is not.
Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Francis Smith, that this meeting be adjourned until April 22nd, 2025, virtually and in person at Soldiers Memorial Hall, 1107 Garrett Street, Sharbot Lake, Ontario, or at the call of the chair at 17:54. Sorry, 5:54. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.